My name is Johnny Fan. I'll be your MC for the day, and I'll be kicking you off through an initial deck. Not too long, only about 67 slides. Shouldn't be long at all. And I always like to define what an enterprise is very carefully and simply through saying, look around at the buildings that you see every day. People working in those buildings, those are typically people working in an enterprise. Everyone else not in a building is likely not in an enterprise. They're in a company of all by all means, and they're they're solopreneurs, entrepreneurs. There are many um, those doing a day gig and a side gig and all of that stuff, contractors, etc. Not at all to not include them, but this session is primarily for the enterprise. Those folks that have departments, teams, they have politics, unfortunately. They have approvals, they have rules, pay bands, all that stuff that we hate and love all at the same time. That's what the enterprise is for. And in enterprises, 78% of them, 78% of them are now using AI. But of those, more than 80% are not sure if they're getting any value out of it. And that is really a very interesting statistic. It shows you that we're at the very beginning, even though it feels like AI has been here forever now, because the marketing machine of AI is like nothing else that we've ever seen, I think, in our lifetimes. It is dominant, it is driving the narrative over all industries and all people types. And it's really converting everyone to talk about AI, whether they want to or not. Everyone's putting AI into their job title and into their LinkedIn space, and it's almost a survival mechanism at this point. So today we're going to try to break through some of that and give you guys some real questions, real tools to help you understand how to do that. And I like a more interactive session, so we're going to have it a little bit interactive. So get your hands ready, right hand or left hand, doesn't matter to me. All right. I want you to raise your hand if you're actively using AI tools in your job today. Awesome. So that's just about everybody. Powerful to see that so easily and obviously there. Um, Raise your hand if you an AI strategy that your board has approved. I'm kind of the board, so I get to half raise my hand, but not a lot of you, right? Which is it fits that stat just perfectly. And then also raise your hand if you feel confident that you know where to start with AI. Not bad. So this is a crew that kind of knows a little bit about AI, has maybe tried it a bit, but not all of you. And that's it. Pretty much the general population of the enterprise state. Now let's talk about some more emotional questions. Raise your hand if you feel like you can do anything at all with AI. Not so many. All right, but a few. All right. I want to see what you guys can do with AI. Now, raise your hand if you feel like you cannot rely on AI for anything. Can't rely on what AI puts out. All right, so we're all okay. There's one. I'm one of those skeptics as well. I got to admit, maybe I'm not 100%, but I'm 80, 90% there. So I always check on AI as well. And then raise your hand if you're afraid that AI is going to take your job. You don't need me. I'm an agent, so I don't actually exist. I'm just a digital rendition of myself. This is how we're doing it. All right. Well, thank you for that interaction. The historic parallel of AI is quite astounding. If you think about where it came from, there's a lot of amazing shifts that have happened just like this. And at those times, we've seen a wild array of reactions to it. Everything from fear to embrace, to people taking advantage of it, to people price fixing on it, so on and so forth. But some of the ones that we wanted to bring to your attention that might fit really well is if you think about AI, as a cultural shift, it matches with some of these ones up on the board. So scribes and the printing press, if you want to go really, really old school. But it also includes encyclopedias to Wikipedia. When was the last time anybody looked or remembers the word Encyclopedia Britannica? But I remember that. I remember when my son in school was no longer allowed to use Wikipedia because they said it's not a proper reference source. I don't think that conversation is the same conversation anymore in school. Cable TV to the Netflix era, CDs to Spotify. Who still has some CDs at home? I still have some CDs at home. Yeah, never use them, but they exist. And then taxis to Uber. Nowadays, you don't even think about it. You can Uber anywhere. There's Bolt, Lyft. It's one in Asia. Anyways, there's another one in Asia. So in all different countries, people can get a ride through a wide variety of applications, and they don't really need to preset a taxi. They don't need to remember a phone number. They just open their app, and whatever country they're in, they can go. And so, how do we survive a shift like this? This is not a small thing. For the enterprise, it's a big deal. We've all seen the headlines with thousands of layoffs happening regularly, right? Every month, there's another uh, one of the large tech companies doing a mass round of layoffs, and it's no joke for a lot of folks. So we're here to give you some tips and tricks, right? And the first one is recognize that behavior changes early. Um, Recognize those behavior changes. Look for how those behavior changes can affect you, your team, your department, your company, and yourself, right? Um, when Netflix came about, it was interesting. Never mind. If has anyone seen the Netflix manifesto, the 67 slides or something that they had about? So Netflix started it with like no vacation policy. You come or go and leave work as exactly as you please. Never have anyone check on you. One of those interesting things that changed the behavior because the Netflix model was all very measurable subscription model output. Um, Reducing organizational drag. The traditional media companies, we worked a lot with media companies over the years, and whether you were an artist or whether you were a production studio, Spotify changed all that dramatically overnight, and it allowed any individual artist, any individual media person to basically have the same distribution level as the biggest studios in a heartbeat, and that changed all entertainment behavior, not just Spotify, but a great example of a brand that everybody knows. Uh, Wikipedia lowered that learning curve. Wikipedia changed what is possible in education for everyone. And then, my favorite is the Khan Academy that came out after that. This is one solo guy making video after video about math. And now that's become an entire online university of its own. Simplifying the customer experience. I mentioned that with Uber and talking about redesigning workflows before competitors. So when you see a new technology, you want to look at how your workflow can be applied against that technology or how the technology can be applied against your workflow. We're going to go through an exact example here today that'll hopefully be something that you've all experienced and understand what to do with. So when we take how do we take advantage of that AI? One of the biggest things that we find a lot of folks do, and we've internally adopted a simple mantra, which is bite small, chew fast. Um, so a lot of folks read the headlines and they think, well, the next thing that I should do with AI is solve a $1 million problem, solve a $50 million problem. And what we're saying is don't do that. Solve a 5-hour problem with 20 minutes of AI. That's how you incrementally work your way through to get to real value. By all means, there's $1 million solved with a $50 AI subscription. But if you try that early, what we've seen over and over again is companies fail at it, enterprises fail at it. And we're going to talk about what that we call that Gen AI friction. And if you follow in your handbook, you'll see that somewhere about midway in the first half of the booklet, how the Gen AI friction really can destroy any initiative that you have with AI. And that means, of course, for you, that you don't get the value out of it. And of course, that you don't necessarily get to have the experience that you want in providing value to your company. Um, Another one is to understand that knowledge is changed. So knowledge has now become a commodity, right? What used to be I know all the stats of every restaurant in the world is now instantly available with one prompt in AI. If I know the greatest walking routes in Toronto, it's on AI. If I want to know how a specific application works, it's on AI. If I want to know how the CRM works, it's on AI. If I want to compare 10 CRMs, it's on AI. So that concept of knowledge being your moat has changed, and for a lot of us, as I look around the crowd and I see the ages here, we grew up in what was coined the knowledge economy. Well, that knowledge economy has now become a judgment economy. And so that's one of the major shifts that you're going to see. It's not about what you know, it's about whether or not you have judgment against that knowledge and whether or not you can apply real world experience and skills against that type of knowledge. Um, and we want to a third message here is to scale high quality output without scaling headcount the same role. So for a lot of folks afraid of losing their job, most companies, however, are actually trying to do more with the same people they have. And notwithstanding the layoff news, for a lot of them, they were just bloated from really a glut over the COVID years of hiring. And so what we're seeing here in this day and age is actually that people are trying to figure out still what to do with AI, and they need people that have good judgment, that have good understanding, and can take the knowledge that they used to have, that they used to contain, and be able to apply their judgment against the more quickly generated AI knowledge that's coming out of these models. And finally, we want to redesign workflows instead of simply digitizing old ones. Who here has a workflow at their company that they are currently working on, perhaps, to do AI in the exact same workflow and thinking, wait a minute, that's insane. That's not the right way to actually look at it. What is the workflow? What is it? The workflow is simply, I want to do this to get to here. And how I do it, I should be fluid in my tool set to use. The workflow we're going to talk about here today is really simple, right? It's hiring a great employee. How do I hire a great employee? How do I know that you're a great employee? How do I know that you're a great employee? How do I hire a great employee? It's such a simple task that we do every single day in every single business around the world. And it is the most obvious example of what we call our Gen AI friction. So we're going to go through that today. We're going to engage our panelists a little bit to have some fun with it. And then we're going to go into some stronger questions to actually get all of you guys some really good insight on what's best here. So for those that don't know or don't remember, how do we start with a job? How do we start with a hiring an employee? The first thing we got to do is describe the job, right? It seems like a simple task, but it's not always such a simple task. And you can ask me, yeah, hey, what should the job be? And it'll go ahead and do that. So we're going to step through the exact process from job description to resume screening to interview scheduling to interview evaluation to final candidate selection. And you're going to see how easily it is to get into friction with AI. So let's start with the job description creation, right? We'll use an LLM agent like ChatGPT, and my prompt here would be create a senior operations manager description focused on AI adoption. Of course, it's focused on AI adoption, and funny enough, AI is great at talking about AI. But the first thing that you have, the first thing you have is technical friction, right? General LLMs they lack the organizational context of what you actually mean when you say senior operations. So those outputs may not align with your hiring frameworks or competencies. It may not know that, and it might have hallucinated requirements unless you know what those requirements are upfront. Then you have nothing to evaluate it on. And if you already know what the requirements are, then the AI is really doing nothing except writing the thing for you, which is just a little bit easier. So immediately start to see why humans and or even the technical friction is becoming an issue. Um, and so if you have to go through an approval process, we all know how long that takes for anything in an organization, especially in an enterprise. All of a sudden, you have a technical friction. You're like, this thing's supposed to speed up making JDs for us, job descriptions for us, and it doesn't because now 10 people have to check it out. So it's not just the technical friction, it runs that human friction. And we'll go into the human friction even more front and center. Now we got to screen the resumes. A whole bunch of resumes come in. You get 800 posts for the 800 resumes for your typical job. And you have some in-app agents. You can use something like Workday Sana to do that. Um, and it'll automatically rank you on years of experience, required certifications, industry keywords, prior company fit. How many of the panel here would fail this job for a senior AI hire? Like, how many of you guys think you would pass the AI agents test? It's questionable, right? And so now we have a human friction because now it's the recruiter or your HCM department, HR department is not sure that they can trust the resumes that AI decided to let through. It might have missed the best candidates out there completely. And it's because we don't have that understanding of how the AI is thinking through it as well. So you generate this human friction because the human and the AI are not on the same page. Almost no different than being with another human being. Doesn't trust you, maybe doesn't understand what you want to do, and you have to have a meeting about it. So that's a great example of human friction. The next one is going to be organizational friction. So interview scheduling seems like a simple enough task. If you connect Claude to your calendar, if you connect anything to any of the LLMs to your Google Workspace calendar, or you connect it to Outlook with Pilot, all of these things work fine. Except now, guess what the AI tool is going to do? It's going to schedule that interview in your first available slot. And how many people want to have that interview in their first available slot? Ends up yeah, none, nobody. This is like the worst scheduling assistant ever, right? Maybe in the second slot, maybe in the third slot, but no, you want judgment in that scheduling, and it's really hard to get that judgment. So all of a sudden, you have an organizational friction on top of that. Never mind, most interviews are now done by more than one person. So I'm not just interviewing for setting up an interview as an agent for Mary. I'm setting it up for John and Pratik and David and so on and so forth. And all of a sudden they all have their schedules and they may not want the first available slot, but the job description or the job posting is an urgent one. And so all of that stuff is what we call organizational friction. And you have the interview evaluation. And imagine if you're talking entirely to an agent, well, you're gonna what's every human being here gonna do? They're gonna try to game the agent, right? I'm gonna say exactly what I think this agent needs to hear to pass it through to the actual human being, so I get a job offer. This is the standard game that we all play, and it's expected. And so you have human friction all over again, and on and on. So you get to final candidate selection, and now you have technical and organizational friction. And so you really have all of it all together. It's no joke. And this is what is keeping everybody from adopting AI throughout the enterprise. Everyone's using it, but nobody's trusting it, and that's really where we're going. We have QR code up here. Feel free to give it a scan and give us a response here. I don't know if you guys can get on your angle over there, but there's a free giveaway for some AirPods with it. So why not win some swag? Your biggest concern is the productivity paradox versus ROI and cost. Security and privacy is a big one these days. You can imagine AI replacing us. Compliance and governance, or turnover and knowledge loss. We start using AI, and what happens to all the knowledge that people actually know if we don't capture it right at that time? I want to talk about data reality a lot as well. For those that don't know, the AI space has been heavily kind of it's been heavily influenced by the concept of data, as if data is the only thing that feeds the LLM and the only thing the LLM needs. Well, what's actually happened is now data's been split into domains, and there are more domains coming than these three. This is just the beginning pieces, but they're going to be very relevant to you. The first one is public data, right? What the public knows. And that's pretty much everything on the internet, if you think about it that way, right? What is public data? It's very simply, where is 800 Bay Street? How many people live in Toronto? This is the type of knowledge that is what we would call public data. The next one is the enterprise data, which is the private data. That means how many invoices do you guys have? What is your customer list? Who are your employees? What are their titles? How long have they worked there? What is your GitHub code? What's your actual product strategy and design? That would be private data. And private data, yes, it matters. And no, you can't compete with it against Walmart. But really, is it that interesting to know every single sales order registered transaction Walmart's ever done? Will that help any of you dominate retail? Probably not, right? But what does matter a lot on top of that private data is the process data. How do they do what they do? How do they get great pricing from their vendors? How do they ship within a day? These are the types of things that tell you using that private data what really is happening at the business. And if you have the process data of the business, technically you can recreate the business. Now you have true competition. And as we move into domains of data that become far more than the inert, basic, declarative knowledge, and we get into intuitive process, procedural type knowledge or data, then AI becomes a very, very interesting and dangerous problem. And I always like to use a simple example. You can't really deploy AI on data you haven't governed. And we think we've governed our data. It's really simple. I use a CRM example all the time. In every single CRM, for those that don't know what CRM is, it's customer relationship management. It's the primary software that sales reps and marketers use and stuff like that. Um, and it's very simple. Like what's it's normal in a CRM to be able to have a a sales rep enter a new contact, right? And of course, if they entered in the wrong contact, you need them to edit it, right? Well, AI at scale, I can have a single rep that has access to maybe their territory, maybe a couple other territories. Quite normal in a normal enterprise deployment to do that. In one prompt, say just delete every single contact I have. And you've lost a major portion of your business. That is not a joke. And this is what AI is struggling with today in the enterprise. They're not struggling with creating a contact, right? They're not struggling with connecting to your email. Yippee doo dah, they connected to all your email. Now, what are you going to do with that email? Well, guess what? It's going to take your emails and say, hey, did you know, Jane, that David thinks you're suck at meeting notes and suck at being punctual and doesn't want to give you a raise? Now we have a problem, right? So that's the type of ungoverned AI deployment that is scaring the bejesus out of enterprise, and that's just keeping enterprise up at night. So that's the type of stuff that we're going to talk about. And so the five principles of enterprise AI that you really need to know and walk away with here today are very simply going to be your data's got to stay yours. Really important. If your data goes outside of your walls, your controls, you're going to have a big problem. AI is a layer. It's not a feature in and of itself. If you're replacing a feature that was already there with AI, where is the ROI on that? Because you're just doing the same thing again, and maybe you're sacrificing a UI, great, but really, are you changing anything by having AI there where you already had a feature to do it? Instead, you were just dealing with a human friction. And so putting a layer through the connections, putting a capability to handle that connection is really where we believe is one of the major principles of AI. AI should enhance, not replace. And you'll see this come up more and more and more. The enterprises that we talk to every day, they are not looking for a rip and replace of their whole stack. I mean, they spent years and millions putting it in. The last thing they want to do is rip it all out because now they got to worry about AI. And if anyone's ever been in finance, they were like, okay, so what is my capital? What is my capital expenditure amortization model here? Is it every 2 years I got to replace my entire tech stack? That's not going to fly. So you really want to enhance what you already have. Permissions are sacred, and you want to continue to follow what's called the least privileged path, which means that you just want to have your permissions more and more locked down, but still the freedom to do what you need. Not an easy task for anyone who's ever tried to do that. And the last one we always like to say is an 80% uh, action seems pretty good in a lot of domains, but it's not okay in enterprise. It's not okay to have your invoice 80% correct. It's not okay to have your name 80% right. And so you need it 99% right. Sometimes even 99% is not enough. For those that remember the SaaS era, which is still here for the record, SaaS era had a minimum of 5 nines of deployment. So they believed that it was important enough that only 1 in 1,000th of a time could you have the system down for even a minute. And so that type of concept needs to apply to AI as well, because AI is a not a deterministic model, it's a probabilistic model. You will not get to 5 nines very, very easily without some augmentation. And so that's really one of the major rules of enterprise AI is that you got to augment it so it gets to the levels of reliability that you need for that particular function. Maybe writing a job description is not a high accuracy demand thing, but getting to a technical evaluation score, that's pretty high, or getting to performance review, big band, that's pretty high reliability. So we believe that the right mindset here is really to shift from should we adopt AI, which is kind of like should we adopt IT and the internet back in the days. Really, is how do we apply it intentionally, right? How do we get more from it than our competitors are going to get from it, and how do we get there faster than them? So that's the new question: is intentionality. How do we intentionally do this? And so the advantage will not come from adopting AI faster. It's going to come from applying it intentionally. Don't rush, is what we like to say. Bite small, chew fast, and hopefully you'll get to the right place.